Man, there was a lot that came out of the Unpacked event, and I wanted to break it all down so you can digest it a little easier. Alright, first up is the Z Flip. This is that flip phone flex display competitor to the Moto Razr that Samsung's been working on, which you should be able to buy on the 14th this month, I think, for $1,380. That's $120 cheaper than the new Moto Razr. It'll come in 3 colors, mirror black, mirror purple, and mirror gold. So yeah, still going with that greasy fingerprint photocopier finish. There's a tiny little display on the back of the phone called the cover screen. That'll display the time and notifications, but it can also be used as a selfie cam viewfinder, which I thought was pretty handy. Now, Samsung's apparently spent a lot of time on the hinge design, creating what's called the hideaway hinge that has some fibers underneath to stop debris from getting in. But mechanically speaking, it's called a freestop hinge, which basically acts just like a laptop display hinge, so you can half open the phone, for example, which will then put it into what Samsung's calling flex mode, which basically splits the screen into 2 parts, making the top half the viewing screen and the bottom half the interaction screen. Now, it sounds pretty cool, but one thought I had was, I wonder how many developers are actually going to take the extra time to code their app to be compatible with one phone. The 6.7-inch display is the first foldable display with a hole punch camera and protected behind Samsung's new ultra-thin glass that can apparently withstand opening and closing 200,000 times, but I'm curious to see how durable it'll be against minor impacts in the long term. Anyways, that dynamic AMOLED display is coming with a resolution of 2636 by 1080, and the rest of the phone will come with a Snapdragon 855 Plus, 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of internal storage with no support for microSD expansion, a 12 megapixel standard wide-angle camera, a 12 megapixel ultra-wide, a 10 megapixel selfie cam on the inside, stereo speakers, a side-mounted fingerprint reader, and a 3300 mAh battery with 15-watt fast charging. So basically, Samsung just killed the Moto Razr 100 times over with both specs and pricing. Alright, now let's get into the new Galaxy S20 phones, shall we? Alright, so there's 3 phones, the S20, the S20 Plus, and the Ultra. Now the designs are largely the same as last year, except they've gotten rid of the headphone jack, and the buttons have all been moved to the right side with nothing on the left, and gone is the Bixby button. Bixby isn't gone, so don't go getting all wet on me, but at least that stupid button's gone. They each have different size displays at 6.2, 6.7, and 6.9 inches, and they all have a single hole punch camera right in the center. They all have Samsung's dynamic AMOLED 1440p displays covered in Gorilla Glass 6, which apparently had the Infinity display flattened a bit so it's less dramatic of a curve, which, you know, if we're lucky, might mean less false positive touch responses and other annoyances, like screen protectors. They also support HDR10+. Still no support for Dolby Vision HDR, but the big thing here is the support for up to 120Hz refresh rate, which is awesome. It's just one catch. At 120 Hz, you're limited to the 1080p resolution. If you want that 1440p crispness, you're gonna have to drop back down to 60 Hz. I don't know why Samsung didn't offer a 90 Hz option at 1440p for that in-between compromise, but if you're a heavy mobile gamer, that's still something to look forward to. And the display's touch sensitivity has also been updated to a 240 Hz sample rate. So that's just icing on the cake, man. Combine all that with the Snapdragon 865 or Exynos 990, and we should notice at the very least a slightly snappier and smoother experience with maybe some faster animation speeds if Samsung was feeling generous. They all come standard with 12 gigs of the new LPDDR5 RAM, which means holding on to more apps in the background for longer, along with 128, 256, or 512 gigs of UFS 3.0 internal storage and support for microSD expansion. So you should notice faster file transfers as well as quicker app and game loading times. Battery sizes have all been increased to at 4,000, 4,500, and 5,000 mAh respectively. My guess is we'll probably see comparable battery life across the board when compared to the S10, S10 Plus, and the Note 10 Plus. Faster performance and better displays usually dictates bigger batteries, so there's really no surprise here. Now, the camera systems on all 3 phones are totally insane, but there are some things I personally look at as gimmicky. Okay, so the S20 and the S20 Plus both have a 12 megapixel standard wide, a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and a 64 megapixel 3x telephoto, except the S20 Plus has a time of flight sensor, whereas the S20 doesn't. They're all able to record video in 8K at 24 FPS, and I'm actually super curious to see how well the 8K recording actually performs. Like, I honestly have no clue what's the bitrate, but I suspect it's not going to be as great as Samsung's making it out to be. Never really is. I hope I'm wrong though. At least they gave us pro mode with video recording, so now we've got manual control over everything like ISO and shutter speed and so on. That's pretty sweet. And the Ultra stands out from the group with a 108 megapixel main standard wide angle, a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and a 48 megapixel telephoto with a 100 times zoom. Now before you shit yourself, there's a catch with these telephoto cameras. Samsung's introduced some new software tech called hybrid zoom. So it takes optical zoom capabilities and then uses software to add additional digital zoom to come up with these numbers. So they basically take the optical zoom number and then multiply it by 10. So for instance, the S20 and S20 Plus have a 3 times hybrid zoom, so technically they have a 30 times zoom, whereas the Ultra has a 10 times hybrid zoom, and when multiplied by 10, we get 100 times zoom. Now, personally, I try and stay away from digital zoom like the plague, and looking at the 100 times zoom results from others who've played around with the Ultra for a bit, man, you may as well just take a picture of your TV when it has no signal. It's just digital noise on a screen as far as I'm concerned. The 30 times photos looked a lot better, but I want to get one in to fully test before I start shitting all over it. Not to mention, you can bet there will be a handful of patches and updates the first couple of months, most likely fixing things like garbage battery life, interface stuttering, memory leaks, odd auto brightness adjustments, and so on. You know, the usual Samsung foolery, so things could change like night and day. Anyways, aside from the hardware, there's new partnerships with Netflix via Samsung's Bixby or Samsung Home or something, whatever. It's stupid, but the real cool partnership is with Microsoft and Xbox through the integration of xCloud, which will bring 4 titles at launch. That's pretty neat, but I don't know a ton about it, so I'll make sure I dive in during my review time with these phones. But I think that does it for this one. Drop me a comment and let me know if there's a feature that stood out to you the most. I'm genuinely interested to know what it is this year you think Samsung surprised you with. Anyway, show me some love with that like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new to my stuff, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram to see what I'm up to next. Thanks, as always, for watching, and I'll talk to y'all in the next one. Cheers.